On today's show, the Hawks lose their 8th straight game, and this time around, it was the defense that let them down as well as the bench. We'll get into how it transpired, what they can do differently moving forward, some trade stuff, and more, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1900. Yes, 1900 of Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Saturday evening into Sunday here at the beginning of February. And today's podcast is sponsored by the folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, make sure your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check it out and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcasts. I want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast always, but especially right now today in episode 1900, a round number to be sure we're getting close to 2000 in this podcast and that I launched, 8.5 years ago at this point in time. I definitely appreciate all of your support. Even if the Hawks were not cooperating with a victory on this evening, I am thankful for everyone checking out the podcast on a regular basis. But with that said, we'll dive into the game that we're going to be covering in depth on this show. It was a 132-127 loss for the Hawks in Indiana to the Pacers. A close-fought game, to be sure. A weird matinee tilt, 5 o'clock start. So I'm recording this podcast a little bit earlier than I usually would. And this is the first time the Hawks have lost 8 games in a row since November of 2018. So firmly in the rebuilding days. I had the podcast at that point in time. I'm sure I broke down all of those losses as I am today. And the Hawks were big underdogs tonight. That's worth noting. And keeping in mind, they were 9.5-point underdogs, according to our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Indiana has been red hot recently. They're 11-2 in their last 13 games. And also, schedule-wise, kind of a quirk here, they're only playing their second game in 7 days, whereas the Hawks have had 4 games in the last 6 days, and Indiana is at full strength, essentially, whereas the Hawks are, let's just say, not at full strength at this point in time. No Bogey, no Capela, no Jalen, of course, out for the season at this stage. By the way, later on the podcast, I will do some trade kind of rumor, rumbling, roundup stuff later on. But I want to just start here because there was a lot of reaction, and I understand why. People don't always love the way that I do things, which I definitely understand too. And all I would say is multiple things can be true at the same time. Number one, the Hawks have lost 8 games in a row. That is not great. No one is saying that it is. I think if you went in that locker room or you talk to the players or the coaches, no one is happy. There's frustration. Is it kind of understandable on some level? Yes. But that doesn't lessen the blow for them or the fans, and I totally get that. I also know that I am wired a certain way to be a little bit more level-headed, a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more seeking context. I'm not living and dying the way that some other people are, and that's fine. This is also it's a job for me, and it's not for you, which I definitely understand. With that said, I think it's also fair to say that some of these losses, including the one tonight, and including, I would say 3 of the last 4 games, the Hawks have played well and well enough to win, and they just didn't win in the end for whatever reason. So there's context to that. But I'm not trying to dismiss an 8-game losing streak. Obviously, you do not ever want to go from 22-19 to 22-27 over the course of a couple of weeks. That is not fun for anybody. But I'm not on the team. Obviously, players and coaches are not going to come out and give you the context that I'm going to give you on this podcast and what I believe and what the numbers say, because they're trying to win every night and they're invested in it. And they obviously have to have that competitive pride, that competitive mindset, whereas I'm just explaining a basketball game to you. So it's not like the same context. I'm not trying to give you a moral victory. I'm just trying to tell you what happened. And that's the way that I do things on the podcast. If you don't like that, I do understand it, but I will just give that to you now. The frustration is certainly warranted, and I'm not dismissing it. I just think that it's a little bit, you just need some context along the way here. Just be like, okay, if the Hawks were at full strength right now and it just lost 8 games in a row, I would totally understand the level of panic that I am seeing in some circles. But they're not at full strength. Joe Johnson's out for the season. They're going to the trade deadline where they have a couple of guys who are in their top 8 players out of the lineup right now for either trade / maybe injury kind of reasons. But they're nowhere near full strength, and they're playing teams, by the way. The schedule's been tough. This is a bad time for the Hawks to be shorthanded, and they've been shorthanded now against a bunch of good teams. Not to go through the entire schedule, but this is not the end-all be-all, but I do think that, generally speaking, the betting market is a good indicator of what a game is projected to be. And the Hawks were big underdogs tonight. The Hawks were big underdogs on Thursday against Cleveland. They were underdogs on Tuesday against Houston. They were underdogs, I think, by 10 points against Minnesota on Monday. So 4 games in a row here this week, basically from over 6 days, 4 games. They were, quote unquote, supposed to lose all 4 of those games. And yeah, maybe if you simulated them over and over again, you might get 1 win out of those 4 games. But they didn't play badly in any of the 4 other than maybe Cleveland. That game got away from them a little bit, but they played pretty well against Minnesota, against Houston, and especially tonight. And, a little bit of variance going against them. So we'll get into how it also kind of transpired now. I want to kind of lead with that. I do get it, but hopefully you get some sort of takeaway from this podcast and all of the work that I do covering the team. With that said, it was a roller coaster game. They were down 18 points in the first quarter and then fought all the way back. I've said this before on the show in the last couple of weeks. You can't afford to get down that big in games, and the Hawks did it again tonight, and they erased that deficit, but it takes energy to do that, and maybe that's part of why they were not able to finish this one off. They did lead at times in the second half, but never with any kind of comfort level. The fourth quarter was about as close as it possibly could have been. In fact, no team led by more than 3 points for like 9.5, 10 minutes in the fourth quarter. But in the end, not quite enough. And for me, I want to leave with the defense. It was not good enough on the whole in this game. That's where I would go first. But it also folds into what I think is probably the bigger story in this game is that the bench was just not good. And the bench struggled. And this might seem counterintuitive, but the bench being the problem is what happens when starters are not available. So you move starters in. The Hawks have also kept DeAndre Hunter in that bench role, but with Joe Johnson's out, like you're down the guy there. They've obviously changed starting lineups when it comes to the center position, but your bench is very thin at this point in time. And the Hawks had a 126 defensive rating in this game. That's very bad, to be very clear. It was really the bench mates that kind of tipped the scales considerably toward the ugliness. They had, for instance, a 135 defensive rating with Larry Nance on the floor at center in this game, 130 plus for Hunter, 130 plus for Krejci, 130 plus for Keaton Wallace. And sometimes the lineups will kind of get that back on offense, like if you have a bunch of shooters on the floor. And I think the theory of the case tonight for the Hawks bench was that they were going to hopefully score a lot, but that did not happen in this game. Every player on the Hawks bench, other than Garrison Matthews, who played a lot with the starters, was minus 10 or worse in the plus-minus game. Every starter in this game was in the positive plus-minus in what became a 5-point loss. So it's not always that clean and evident, but it really was kind of indicative if you watch this game when the starters played, when Trae and Dyson and Risacher, Okongwu were on the court, the Hawks played pretty well. And when they weren't, they got killed. And that is kind of what happened along the way here. The Pacers, by the way, are quite good on offense. That's always worth keeping in mind. They've given the Hawks all kinds of fits for like a year plus now. They've won 5 in a row against Atlanta. Last year, they killed the Hawks multiple times. That wasn't the case here, but they shot it well from the field, 54% from the field, 35 assists, 12 turnovers, 64 points in the paint. They had 98th percentile efficiency in the half court in this game. And again, they got enough stops. It wasn't great defensively with the starters, but it was solid enough. But when the starters left, especially Okongwu and the frontline guys, it got real ugly real fast. And one more illustration of that concept. Coming into tonight, the Hawks were 7-0 this year when they scored at least 1.2 points per possession. So a 120 offensive rating or better. They were 7-0 until today. Tonight, they lost, and now they're 7-1. And that means basically your defense is not good enough. They scored enough to win this game, is that they couldn't get enough stops to complement it. And on that front, offensively, they were pretty good. A 122 offensive rating, their best offensive rating in a loss all season long. They had 61% true shooting in the game. That's a very strong number. 50% from the field, 38% from three. They got to the line 32 times. I will note this, they missed 9 free throws. Now, it's not as bad as you might think to miss 9 free throws when you take 32 of them, but that's only 72%, and that's not very good. So, a couple of those could have helped big time in this game. So that was a notable thing. That was the one offensive thing that I would say was a shortcoming for the Hawks overall in this one. But they have 31 assists and only 13 turnovers. That's a very good ratio. 6 guys up in double figures. Big games, like legitimately big games for Trae, for Risacher, for Dyson, but it's just not enough because the defense was not good. And again, for me, it was the bench. It was the guys who, and you could say it's not their fault. I'll get into this a little bit more later on, but the lineup construction, I didn't love from Quinn in this game. I don't want to overstate it either, but they were really small at times. Some of that out of necessity, but some of that they could have used Don Barlow. By the way, they didn't play Mo Gay at all in this game, which is not like outrageous on itself, but there were certain matchups where it was like, man, they're just really small right now, and it was that kind of hurts your defense along the way. And it's tough to ignore that when you can't get stops. And the Hawks, simply put, could not get stops in this one. So all that said, it was this game in particular, I would say the Hawks played well enough to win. if you care about this thing, but for me, it's not about covering the spread. It's more about the projection. They were projected / the betting line was plus 9.5 for the Hawks in this game. And they lost by 5, and it was even closer than that. So they beat projections in this game. And I know you don't want to hear that. I'm not saying that's like acceptable or whatever you want to say that it is, but the Hawks did not play poorly on the whole in this game. They're on the road. It's a good opponent, all that stuff. It's just that, you dig a big hole and then you can't get stops with your bench. And ultimately it's a 5-point loss. All right, we'll get into plenty more on the podcast today. Plus, at the end of the show, some of the latest rumblings, rumors, etc. First, though, from our partners on the podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Are you looking for tickets for the next big event? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports outing of some kind, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache for you, but with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. The app does all the hard work for you, does not waste your time with endless searches. I've been using Gametime Picks for a long time now. I love it for many reasons, but the curated deals make it very simple to find good tickets at great prices and no more sifting through thousands of different options for no reason. I recently used a super deal for a prime seat. I could not believe the value there. It was an absolute steal. And the from the seat view is also an absolute game changer for me. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what the seat looks like in the venue, and that's really reassuring for someone who's not been in that venue before in particular. And the best part is you're actually covered by Gametime's lowest price guarantee, and the tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something happens to come up. Take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets right now with the folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account right now at Gametime and use that code. It's LOCKEDONNBA. That's Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we'll dive in now to the game flow in this one and the starting lineup change for the Hawks actually in this one. Dom Barlow got the start at the 4. That surprised a lot of people. I wasn't shocked, but I wouldn't have guessed that either coming into the day. It was not Dom's first career start. He actually had one with San Antonio last year, but it was his first Hawks start. And for the record, I kind of like this. Hawks fans are definitely less familiar with Dom because he's been not in the system. The Hawks didn't draft him like they did with Mo Gay, no summer league stuff. But he's a very real prospect. He's 21 years old, out of overtime elite, was with San Antonio. I love that two-way signing, which I talked about this summer a lot. He's been good in the G League. He's been around the team all year long. And by the way, he played pretty well in this game at a small sample size. So the Hawks actually had him defending Miles Turner, kind of playing center on defense to some degree with Okongwu on Siakam. That was not always the case, but certainly made some sense. And I thought Dom was pretty solid in his 13 minutes of play, which we'll come back to later on. The Hawks did lead this game 9-4 to begin the game, and there was a 24-6 run by Indiana to take a double-digit lead. That began with the Hawks having 6 possessions in a row where they didn't score, and Indiana scored 12 straight points, and the hole was dug at that point. It was a 10-man rotation for the Hawks in this game. No huge surprises other than Mo Gay going from starting the last 2 games to not playing at all in this one. Again, I don't absolutely hate that decision. I'm going to use Mo in this game, but if I wasn't going to use Mo, I would have played Dom Barlow more, if that makes sense. I didn't like how small they were at times. Dom started, but he played 13 minutes total while starting and not being in foul trouble or anything like that. So I didn't love that decision, but I do, I at least understood the rest of the rotation decisions to some degree, even if I didn't love the minutes distribution. They were down 16 points at the end of the first quarter. Indiana had 40 points in the first, and they hit 7 threes. Defensively, they struggled big time. But as I got into a little bit earlier, the bench lineups are just going to struggle defensively when they play Hunter and Nance at the 4 and the 5. So I've said for a while, Hunter is a solid defender in a vacuum. But at the 4, he is smaller, a little bit smaller than most guys, and not a great athlete and not a great rebounder. So Hunter is better at the 3, I would say, defensively. He's fine at the 4 in some lineups, but you're playing him at the 4, a little bit undersized, a little bit under potency defensively. And the Nance at the 5, I think Nance is mostly a center at this point, but defensively, he isn't an anchor. Ideally, you wouldn't have Larry Nance play against like with a big power forward. Someone like Barlow, someone like Mo Gay, someone like Jalen Johnson, someone who is a little bit bigger because Nance is undersized at that position. So having Hunter and Nance at the 4 and the 5 is really tough, and it's even tougher when you're not playing Risacher. And those guys play without Risacher most of the time tonight. If you can play Risacher at the 3 at 6'9", 6'10", it's easier to kind of understand what the theory of the case. When you're playing those guys with, for instance, tonight there was a lineup with Trae and Garrison and Hunter at the 4 and Nance at the 5. And that's not going to work defensively. Vit Krejci at the 3 has enough length, but is not physical necessarily. It was just a little bit underwhelming defensively. And look, Obi Toppin's not a terrible player, but he had 18 points in 15 minutes for the Pacers. He just bludgeoned that unit, and there was nothing they could do to stop it other than lineup changes, and they didn't really do that. So I didn't love that. I just want to point that out. It's not anybody's individual fault. I thought they might use mode to offset that. I think more Barlow would have made sense, but that hurt them early and often. They did kind of chip away in the second quarter. I thought Dyson was really important in that stretch. His defense is always really good. He was putting pressure on the rim offensively throughout the first half. They had a nice possession where Garrison got fouled on a three-point attempt, made all three. They were actually down only 1 right before halftime and down 4 at the halftime break after being down 13 with like 5.5 minutes to go in the first half. They scored 40 points. The Hawks did in the second quarter. Big halves from Garrison and Dyson, who had 29 points combined, and Trae had 10 assists in the first half. That is his 10th game this year with at least 10 assists in a half. That is ludicrous. And to tell you how ludicrous it is, no one else in the league has more than 2 halves like that. Trae has 10 halves with 10 assists or more. No one else in the league has more than 2. So that's a pretty big gap. Anyway, to the second half. They were actually leading early in the third quarter after a 13-5 run. Dunks by Barlow and Okongwu. Trae dominated for like 5 minutes in a row in the third quarter. He accounted for 20 of 22 points for Atlanta. He had 4 assists, 11 points, just like totally cooking there. And then, of course, the downturn began when Trae went to the bench. Not a new thing, but it happened. 19-7 run by the Pacers to kind of retake control of the game. There was a banked-in 3 by Indiana that was like, shrug your shoulders, like, what's going on here? But it happens sometimes. But then, not going to do the whole thing again, but defensively, they allowed 3 separate 3-point plays. And I thought at least 2 of them were like very soft, silly fouls, like being just kind of trying to kind of do like a half strip or whatever. And that lack of punch was hurting them around the rim, let's just say. Trae did score at the end of the half, in the third quarter to get within 4, but it was a definitely costly down the stretch of the third quarter. And the fourth was very interesting. So the Hawks actually had a nice start to the fourth quarter, 7-2 run. They go up by 1 point. And Indiana calls timeout. It's like, all right, here we go again. We're back in this game if you're the Hawks. Now, Risacher, by the way, had an awesome no-dip 3 in the right corner. If you don't know what that means, he caught the ball high and didn't bring it down. He just, as a 6'9" guy, to be able to do that, Bogey can do that too. But Risacher, that's an important skill for the future that he actually showcased there. Love to see that. And the game was very close. I said it before. I'll say it again now. No one led by more than 3 points for the first 9.5 minutes of the fourth quarter. Back and forth. Couple of missed opportunities for the Hawks for sure. They did sit Trae briefly in the fourth. They kind of had to, so he wouldn't play like 15 minutes in a row. I would have gone to Dyson at point guard. They didn't do that. They went back to Keaton for one more run. They were only -2 in those minutes, but that is 2 points that were big in the game, I would say. And when Trae came back in, he actually made back-to-back threes to get the Hawks going a little bit. But they also defensively gave up 5 points on this possession, so there was only +1 in that swing. Now, I tweeted about this too, but I'll share it with you here. I believe the biggest sequence of the game, the biggest minute sequence of the game happens here. About 3:30 to go, approximately, in the game. The game is tied. The Hawks had 2 shots within like 5 feet of the rim. They were not easy shots. Trae had like a contested floater that he missed. Dyson tracks it down, and he misses a putback. And I'm sure he wanted that one back. He kind of rushed it. It wasn't a super easy one, but those 2 misses were big. Would have been nice to get one of those to go down, take the lead, and then magnified because Indiana hits a 3. So that's basically a 5-point swing in one possession. That's tough. Now you're down by 3. Then Hunter misses a corner 3 that was a good look. That's like a 40+% look for DeAndre Hunter. He misses it. Pacers come down. Hunter, by the way, makes a mistake defensively, I thought, and doubles, didn't need to. Kick to the corner, open 3-point shooter. They make it, and suddenly you're down by 6. So at the very least, it was a 6-point swing. I would argue it was like an 8-point swing, maybe even a bigger one than that. If you make one of those layups and make one of and Hunter makes his 3, it could have been an 11-point swing. That's what kind of swing we're talking about. Like that is, I'm not saying that's where they lost the game, but if there was 1 minute the Hawks were like back in this game, that would have been it for me. Anyway, you're down 6 again. They were still in the game, but that was the first time like anybody had trailed by more than 3. There were chances from there. Like they got within 3 again after Trae drew a foul and made both free throws, but then Siakam scored. They trade turnovers. Trae actually misses a 3. They get the rebound. Risacher gets a 3-pointer off just after the buzzer, and it was the right call. Trae got a little bit had to kind of fling it out of desperation. Risacher just took one extra dribble that he didn't have to take. He did just right there, just didn't go down, and now you're in trouble. Now, Quinn gets the ball back because they actually did a nice challenge down by 5 that they won. And they had to score. Down 5 with like 40 seconds to go. Must score possession. Trae actually hits a 3 after a massive offensive rebound by Risacher. So, by the way, love to see Risacher close in the game. That's not a small thing for a rookie. Go ahead and do that. He played well in this game. But they had to have that one. Trae makes the 3. You're down by 2. The problem is it was 27 seconds left, so you really couldn't play it out. And by play it out, what I mean is you kind of have to either get a steal or you have to foul at some point. You can't let them take the shot. Because if they do that and they do it well, you'll have no time, basically, to get it, and you're down by 3. So you had to kind of foul. Sorry, you're down by 2. You had to kind of foul or get a steal. They didn't get the steal. Dyson fouls Halliburton, who's the wrong guy to foul. But if you watch the play, they scramble. Halliburton's kind of got a lane to the rim for maybe a layup if they don't foul him. So I didn't mind the decision to foul him there, but they did it. Halliburton makes both. You're down by 4. They do get a quick 2, the Hawks did, on a dunk by Okongwu, but now you're in the same situation again. You're still down by 2. You have to either foul or get a deflection or get a steal. Dyson almost stole it on the inbounds pass. They had to foul Aaron Nesmith. He makes both. So Indiana makes all 4 free throws. Huge swing there. Good for them. That's all about, they were 22 of 25 from the line. That was big in this game. And now down 4 with about 12 seconds to go, you kind of have to have a miracle, basically. And that didn't happen. They tried a 3, and that was it. Trae misses it. I think it was like a 30-footer. Misses it. Have to foul again, and that's that. So they had chances. They never led again after like the middle of the fourth quarter, after that sequence that I talked about before, when they had a chance. That was the only time in the rest of the game they had a chance to take the lead, when they had those 2 shots within 5 feet on the same possession. They made 3s. After that, they made plays. Dyson was good in this game. Trae was really good in this game. Risacher played really well in this game. They did enough. Okongwu was good too, but it just wasn't quite enough. And we'll have more on the individual player stuff later on in the podcast. First, though, a word from our partners. And by the way, in just one second as well, we'll be getting into the NBA, let's just say the deadline stuff, the rumors and all that stuff. Stay tuned. Be back in 1 second. This was brought to you by PrizePicks. The basketball season is heating up right now. There's no better way to get on the action with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. They have over 10 million members and billions of award-winning winnings, and the PrizePicks, they make it easy and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Here's how it works. You just pick more or you pick less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you go up to 1,000 times your cash. This week, I'm looking at the board every single day, as I always do, and the best part is the PrizePicks keeps it actually simple for you. Set your lineup in just as low as 60 seconds. Plus, their fast, secure withdrawals means you get paid quickly when you win at PrizePicks. Plus, they have Taco Tuesday promotions. They actually give you discounted player projections for even more value. And you can check out the promos tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes free for 3, you want a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. That is code LOCKEDONNBA. $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, before I dive into the individual player stuff in this game, a little bit of the rumor front. And if you missed it, I recommend, on the trade stuff in particular, listening to the show on Thursday night. I talked about Trae getting snubbed for All-Star, and I talked a lot about Bogey and Capela. All of that is still relevant at this point in time. A small update here, though, before we get to everything else. On Friday, ESPN's Brian Windhorst mentioned the Hawks as a potential team in the Brandon Ingram sweepstakes. Now, I noticed on social media after that, but I've heard the same rumblings there that Windhorst has. I think the Hawks are at least somewhat in the mix on Ingram. Of course, rumblings are rumblings. And later that day, Mark Stein and Jake Fisher kind of downplayed that a little bit in their reporting. I think that is still on the board as a potential. But I would always caution this. I feel like Hawks fans, and by the way, every fan does this, not just Hawks fans, but like when your team is linked to a player, it's like you forget that the rest of the league still exists. There are lots of teams that I'm Brandon Ingram right now. Toronto's been reported. Anyway, the Hawks can still get him. There's no question about that. I'll save my deep dive for later, but I'll just say this. If you can find Ingram for cheap, I would understand that, because he is an expiring contract. Notable there. He hasn't played in about 2 months with an ankle injury as well. There's some financial stuff that you have to think about in the future with Brandon Ingram that I'll save for later if it gets closer or if it gets done. But at the same time, he would give them another offensive creator, and the Hawks do need a scorer/creator. They absolutely do need that player, and he is legitimately 6'9", good size, can shoot it a little bit, all that stuff. So the potential there is very clear as far as what the appeal is on Ingram. He's not durable. there's lots of competing stuff on Ingram, let's just say, but he is a good player and he would kind of fit a need to some degree as well. So stay tuned. That might come up more this week as we get closer. Nothing super new on Bogey or Capela, what I haven't already said on Thursday. But the only thing that I would say that's like kind of new-ish since then is that there's been some buzz about the Lakers on Bogey that I've heard about, as well as the Pelicans a little bit. So like you got the Suns, the Heat, the Lakers, the Pelicans have been kind of out there to some degree. I have heard there's 6 or 7 teams the Hawks have called, or like I always talked to about Bogey in the last week or so. We'll see on that. Obviously, Capela's available as well. A little bit less buzzy on Clint than it is on Bogey right now. Also, Clint is expiring and Bogey is not. Keep that in mind. That's a very big factor in this. And last thing on the rumor front is that it's not really a trade thing, but I mentioned this once already, I think like 2 weeks ago when it was reported out of Australia. But now Mark Stein also reported on this again over the weekend that Quinn Snyder is a prominent candidate for the head coach of the Australian national team. He would not leave the Hawks to do this, but that's been out there. And, Stein writes a prominent newsletter, and that was kind of the lead in it at one point this weekend. So that's out there. I'll tell you what's going on there if there's anything to go on there. He was asked about it last week by Lee Ellis, formerly of the Starters. Lee's a great guy. Quinn, of course, gave like the perfunctory, nice to be in the mix kind of thing, but he didn't like say anything about that otherwise. So that's all I have on the news / rumor front. But look, it's a big week. The deadline is Thursday afternoon, so I am fully on alert for trade emergency stuff, rumors. I'll have stuff basically every time I do a show between now and Thursday. I'll have the latest news and updates, and if anything happens, I'll swoop into action as I always do. Okay, back to the game quickly here. I already said this already, but the bench was not good in this one, and that was the case throughout the bench basically. Even Garrison, who played actually had the best plus minus, was not good defensively, I didn't think, in this game. He did make 3 threes, 14 points. So like he knew he at least nullified it with his offense. That was helpful. That was basically all in the first half. Second half, he was pretty shaky, had 4 fouls, 2 turnovers. Like he was just okay at that. Keaton Wallace has struggled recently, 4 points in 14 minutes. Not to pile on Keaton, but like he's just not what you would ideally want in that role. But he's on a 2-way contract. Like he's been okay. He's been like semi-playable, just not the absolute best in 14 minutes for Keaton. Veet's been struggling big time. This is now 4 games in a row, I would say, that Veet has not played well in. I think he's better in a guard-ish role than he's been in this like small forward, combo forward role. He also had 0 rebounds in 15 minutes, 4 fouls. Defensively, he got beat up a little bit. Now, it's not really reasonable to ask Veet to get in the way of Obi Toppin defensively. That's not like what you should be asking Veet to do, but he's not very good. I would, generally speaking, probably stop playing Keaton Wallace when Trae is available and kind of go back to the Dyson Veet combo in non-Trae minutes. That'd be what I would probably do moving forward, as long as Trae is out there. But it's a small tweak. Just want to at least say that out loud. And Larry Nance, look, Larry was better on offense tonight than he's been in recent days, but defensively he got beat up a little bit. Like I said before, it's not all on him. He needs some support around him to be an actual center defensively. Like he would probably need to play with Dom or with Mo right now, and they didn't really do that for him tonight. It was a lot of him and Hunter. I don't love that for Larry, but he just wasn't very good defensively. That's worth just saying out loud. Hunter had a bad game for Hunter. Offensively, only 5 shot attempts in 29 minutes. Kind of weird. Not like a lot of volume for Hunter in this game. Defensively, he was okay at times, but like not going to nullify all the size concerns. Did have 8 rebounds, but minus 15 and not his best night for the 6th man of the year, at least candidate, if not front runner at this point in time. Elsewhere, Dyson Daniels was very good. 36 minutes, 23 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal, and a block. He now has a steal in 20 straight games. Pretty impressive there. But he was 6 of 12 on 2s, 2 of 3 from 3. That's the line 6 times, made 5 of them. He was really good. Dyson's been really kind of sneakily breaking out offensively in recent days. Hopefully that continues, and he's playing a lot, as he should. He's been awesome. Dom Barlow, again, his first Hawk start, 10 points, 3 rebounds, 2 blocks in 13 minutes. I would have played Dom more. You also can kind of see why they may not have wanted to. Like, that power forward spot, it's kind of a reminder. It's maybe an example more than a reminder. The starting lineups are a little bit overvalued. The Hawks are obviously using that power forward spot as a rotating door right now. Like, they're just trying stuff. But I thought Dom was pretty good. And again, he's a real prospect. He finished around the rim very nicely in this game. Defensively, he's a little bit lost, I have to say, but he's not like useless there. He does have good size, good athlete. So I like what I saw from him. And if anything, he should have played more, I thought. Risacher, 29 minutes. I love that he closed the game. He played more than he usually does. That's a good sign. He should be playing this much all the time moving forward unless there is a medical reason why he shouldn't be. Because as discussed previously, they're not trying to tank games, but they do have to look toward the future now. And I think Risacher is obviously a huge part of that. Play him early, play him often. 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 of 6 on 2, 3 of 5 from 3, 2 assists, no turnovers, like just played well. Like what I saw there from the number 1 overall pick. Okongwu was good, 12 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, no turnovers, finished around the rim. Did miss 2 free throws that were big ones in the fourth quarter. We'll circle that. But other than that, I thought he was certainly very good. In fact, he had the best defensive splits of anyone on the court, which made sense. He was definitely their best defender outside of Dyson. I would say it was Okongwu. He played well. And then last guy is Trae Young, 34 points, 17 assists for Trae. He was 6 of 11 on 2s. 5-15 from 3 is not like great, but that's decent enough. Got to the line 7 times, made all 7. 34 points on 29 shooting possessions is a very solid / good efficiency overall, plus the 17 assists. He played well. What are you going to do? The starters were all pretty good in this game. The bench was not very good, and that's the short log line of this contest. So from here, the Hawks go to Detroit for the final game of a 3-game road trip. Detroit's a team that can beat them for sure. They've lost to them twice this year, both competitive games. It's also winnable. They'll be underdogs, almost certainly in the game, but certainly that's one that you can get if you play well. We'll see. And then after that, they come home. They'll actually be home for the deadline. So they play Wednesday at home and Friday at home with deadline in between on Thursday. So a lot of times the Hawks are on the road during the deadline. Not this year. So we'll see what Landry Fields has to say. We'll see if they do anything. Nothing's changed on my mind, by the way, of what I've been saying. They get back Thursday. I think if I had to guess right now, Bogey will be moved, but it's not a guarantee. So we'll just say I'm on full alert. Is the way that I'll leave that on the podcast. So please, please, please stay tuned and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcasts. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it on that platform to help me to grow the podcast. Leave comments as well, 5-star ratings and reviews. Follow the show on Twitter /X at Locked On Hawks. I am on Twitter /X at BT Rowland. Also follow my work at Blue Sky. It's at BT Rowland. I'm also on patreon.com/BT Rowland for writing stuff, etc. I might have some Hawks writing stuff elsewhere in the coming days as well that I'll announce at some point if that happens. But anyway, thank you very much for supporting the show as I open the show with episode 1900. That's a lot of podcasts, a lot of me talking, and I appreciate all the sickos listening to the podcast for a regular basis for a long, long time now. So stay tuned, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time.